Fantastic, fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the number one most valuable real estate community in existence. Today we've got a very, very exciting podcast, a revolutionary podcast with the one and only Miss Ella Ray, the creative transaction coordination queen. Very excited for this podcast to have Ella on and talk about her story, how she got into real estate, and how she found her niche in transaction coordination. So definitely take advantage of this opportunity. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the YouTube so that you can get the replays sent to you, and drop a comment letting us know how much you appreciated this story. I know this one's going to be fire for sure, for sure. So I'm excited. Let's bring Miss Ella Ray up to the stage and get it started.
Hey, John.
Hey, Ella, how are you doing today?
I'm all right. Let me turn on my video here. Hey, what's going on? I feel like it's been forever since I've seen you.
Absolutely. It's great to see you.
Likewise. Hey, everybody. Man, it's been a minute since I've been in this room. I miss this place.
Happy to have you back.
When you first started.
Yeah, Ella's been one of the OG members for sure. She's been here literally since the beginning.
Yeah, I remember there was like maybe 10 people on the whole server. You've definitely grown a lot for sure.
It's incredible. I'm going to send out this link here for people to come and join us. I really want a lot of people to hear your story because I got a chance to actually see it. And it's incredible to see how far you've come in such a short amount of time.
You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. It definitely feels I don't even realize how much time has passed, you know? It's not until I actually look and see like, oh man, it's like 2-3 years ago, maybe, if that.
Right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be an incredible opportunity. Guys, invite somebody you think would benefit from being in this room. Who is Ella Ray?
Man, I'm probably, I don't even know how to describe this. So if I were to name anybody in here who is just starting, that would be me. I'm a Laura, I'm a Pasha, I'm a Lander, I'm a Jacob. I think we all came into this server with the same goal in mind, was to get involved in real estate investing. And that's who I am. Like I started with this probably like 2.5 years ago, I want to say. And you were the first community that I joined, and I learned about wholesaling, and I started making connections with you guys and just grew from there. I tried the whole wholesaling thing, but that didn't really work for me. I'm not smooth on the phone like you guys are, so I ended up taking the route of TC, which has been it's been amazing, man. It's really interesting to start TC work and really get to see the inner workings of these deals.
I know that's incredible because a lot of people that hear about real estate wholesaling, they think that, oh, well, this is the only option, for them, and there's nothing else, that they're going to be able to do. And I'm especially inspired by you and your story because you took a whole nother route, and a whole nother approach to real estate, being a transaction coordinator, especially, for creative finance deals and that kind of stuff. And I am blown away by what you've been able to accomplish, doing something completely unique.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's funny because I think people think of real estate investing and they think of owning properties and wholesaling properties and all of that, but they don't really think about getting the properties to the closing table, right? So, and there's so much that goes in. I end up handling so many different things that no two deals ever end up being the same. Every deal is different. Every deal has its nuances. Things from like open permits and dealing with refinances and just basically everything under the sun. And it's very, very different and challenging, but I think it's understated and it's undervalued for sure.
Absolutely. I can definitely be the first to say that because we don't really recognize how much goes into transaction coordination until you start doing these deals at scale. And
For sure.
I want to talk to you and ask you about what was the moment where you realized like, hey, wholesaling is a great opportunity, but like this is not where I want to focus and this is not where I see myself really thriving. And how did you make that transition to put yourself in a position now where you're literally so popular and so many people are working with you and everybody knows REI is the creative transaction coordination queen?
Oh man, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Um, I think where it changed for me was where, I was really giving it my all with wholesaling. I was doing the thing. I was getting up every day, making calls, like following up. I had my CRM going on. I had everything going on. And I just kept on trying. And I felt like I was hitting a brick wall every single time. Like, no, 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 no. And I couldn't understand. I was like, I don't know what to say to these people, right? So at one point I was kind of like, well, I guess I'm going to have to go back to doing executive assistant work because that's how I was making my money and that's how I was making a living and paying rent. And, you know, I said there's got to be something different here. There's got to be something else that I can do with real estate. And I think once I joined Sub2, I was able to see the whole TC aspect of it that I wasn't even aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And I started watching some of the videos with some of the other TCs and thinking to myself, wow, I could do that. That's easy. That's contracts. That's paperwork. Like that's always been my jam.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started doing it for I think Matt Riley was probably one of my first clients.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So it started here in the community with you guys. And I started doing it with Matt, and then he had a buyer who ended up coming to me later on when they got their deal, and so on and so forth. And it's almost always been word of mouth. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have a website. I really don't have any kind of like social media. I hate it on camera. I'm like, I can't. But I've started to come out of that now, and I think as I start to get to know more and more people, it becomes a little more easy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it just kind of like happened organically. One deal led to another, one deal to five deals to 10 deals, and I'm up to like between 20, 25, 30 deals a month sometimes.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, I sleep at my desk, but hey,
But are you doing what you love
it's
now?
fun.
You feel like
Yeah,
this is your jam?
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I joke around about this a lot because some days I just want to pull out my hair. Like today was just one of those days, right? Working with a title company, I'm basically spelling everything out. Like, this is how you need to fix the settlement statement. You're off by thousands of dollars. You need to fix this. And they just keep on sending back the wrong settlement statement. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. But at the same time, I love what I do. So I always say, like, this is probably the most toxic relationship of my life, right? Love hate relationship, but I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
That's
I really
awesome.
do love what I do. I love my clients and I love being able to help everybody get their deals closed.
Talk to us a little bit about what a day to day looks like for you. It sounds like you do a lot of negotiation with the title company, making sure that they're on top of things and they see the agreements the way that you want them to. What does that look like? What are some of the responsibilities of a transaction coordinator that and you know how to do perfectly, but maybe a lot of people that are starting to scale their business don't recognize until they hit that barrier?
It's just knowing the kinds of things to look out for, knowing how to read a title commitment, knowing what certain things mean on a settlement statement, knowing how to add up all those numbers. Because at the end of the day, I feel that people just kind of like, or knowing how to write up your purchase contracts is huge, like
Mm-hmm.
huge. I mean, I've had to say, thanks for the contract, but your purchase price is totally wrong here, right? Um, and knowing how to find those little issues and address them beforehand before they become like a really huge issue is key. So definitely being on top of everything, making sure all of your documents are right, making sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody understands what's going on. And I think especially when it comes to wholesaling and when you're wholesaling creative deals, it's very easy to say, um, sorry, I'm getting like notifications and they're driving me
No,
nuts.
it's
It's when you're starting to do wholesale deals and you're so concerned about, oh, I don't want the seller to know how much I'm making and all of this stuff. With sub-2 transactions, the buyer has to know what the underlying numbers are because ultimately they're taking on those mortgages. So the assignment fee has to be very transparent because at the end of the day, you can't just say, okay, well, your entry fee is, I had this happen to me today. They're like, your entry fee is $29,000. What it actually was a $19,000 assignment with $10,000 going to the seller. And when I'm
wow.
trying to explain this to the title company, they're like, no, well, that's not what it says. It says the assignment is $29,000. And I'm like, but it's $10,000 cash to seller. And it just creates like this whole big mess, right? So super transparent. The seller should know what's going on. Of course, there's all these disclosures that they have to sign. Don't have them wait until the last minute at the closing table to sign those disclosures because you're going to end up killing your deal. So I think, when you want to wholesale cash deals, that's a whole different game. That doesn't it's like, all right, fine, whatever. You can make whatever you want to make. You don't have to tell anybody. But when you're doing transactions like this with subtws, you can't really hide this. It doesn't work that way. You want to be as transparent as possible so that it doesn't fall apart at the closing table, which I've seen happen many times.
And are those sub two, those creative deals, those wraps, what you mostly are focused on now?
Yes. That
Okay.
is I do cash too, but I find that cash is more work than subtws.
Really?
And yeah, it's a lot more work for some reason. These title commitments come back and they're super dirty and there's a lot that needs to be taken care of and there's also a lot more people in cash transactions for some reason than there are in subtws. Um, but I think other than cash, sub-2 of a sub-2 is also kind of complicated. Like if you buy a deal sub-2 and then you want to sell it to somebody else because it didn't pan out the way that you thought it would, um, it ends up me having to get in touch with the original seller and all this other stuff. Um, I actually have a closing going on right now because I think I told you I had 2 closings today. And man, just give me 1 second.
This is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is live transaction coordination work right here, live at the
Do
TC.
you guys mind if I just take this call? I have to make a phone call real quick. I just got to talk to this guy real quick about his.
We'd love to see it. We love to see the business, what it actually takes. This is the sauce that people need to see.
Let me just take a look and see. Sorry, I was trying not for this not to happen, but
Really?
hey, Martin, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
So what's going on now?
Just looking through the document. I saw there was like a difference between what was it? The total reduction amount due to the seller being the 188,772. Then the existing amount of the loan was $194,750. Wasn't sure about the difference. About that.
So 188,772 is what you said. That's the amount of your existing loan, right? So if you look at the bottom line, number 603, cash to seller, it's 0. So you don't have to bring anything to the table.
Yes, it's cash seller is what you're just talking about.
Yeah.
The cash means I lost the $5,000 because the foundation needed to be done. So he's $5,000,
Yeah.
which basically means I don't get anything.
Mm-hmm.
and my current loan is 188,772.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
That's correct. That's the existing balance as of the last mortgage statement that you received, which was due, I want to say November 1st.
And then, as far as it's saying that the um, existing loan is 194,750. Um, shouldn't that be the same number?
So you're talking about line number 220 where it says total paid for or by borrower?
No, further down on the.
What's
And
the what's the line
it's on
number?
the.
Oh, on the promissory note. Okay. So the promissory note, it's based off of so let me see, you're not getting any seller. So that's usually based off of the original note that you signed with the lender. Yeah.
Okay, all right, I understand now. Yeah, I just didn't want to make sure it was like a difference that I'm going to suddenly owe because
So you're the holder on that note, so that means that they owe you money, but essentially it's not really that they owe you money. So if something were to happen, and let's say, God forbid, they were to default on this mortgage, the promissory note and the mortgage or the deed of trust are going to be the documents, the security instruments that you're going to need in order to foreclose if you had to do that. So that's not anything that you owe. No, no, that's the money that they owe you, or rather,
okay,
your mortgage company.
cool, awesome. All right, and yeah, I mean, ultimately, then I think it's all right. Otherwise, I didn't see anything different from the last document that I saw too. So,
Okay, cool. All right. Well, if you have any other questions or you need anything else, you could definitely text me. If I don't get to respond to you right away, it's because I'm either on the other line or I'm just working on something. But I'll get
okay,
back to you as soon as I can.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marty. Bye. Sorry, guys. So
Ladies and
that
gentlemen,
is
drop some fire in the chat. Ella
basically
Ray
my
really
whole
does
day.
this business.
That is I spend my whole day on the phone and answering emails back and forth all day long because people have questions. And I look at it this way: as a TC, you got your wholesalers, you got your buyers, your sellers, your title company, your lawyers. All of the information comes in here and I have to disseminate it accordingly, right? So I make it a lot easier for investors because all I have to do is, like, if you're doing a deal with me and I have title company asking me for stuff that has nothing to do with you, you don't have to waste your time looking at these emails and trying to figure out how to get this done. I don't even need to tell you, hey John, they need X, Y, and Z. I just go and do it. And that, I think, is where the added value is. Plus, I know what to look out for, whereas investors who aren't doing this all the time or maybe aren't really paying attention to this back end stuff don't really know what to look for. So I can almost always prevent them from paying more, right? Like, I'm not the cheapest, definitely not cheap, but you save a lot of money by using a TC. So don't discount the value in that for sure.
Absolutely, especially if you're doing multiple deals, the time that it takes, the headache and the stress. But like you said, you have the experience. So, what are some things that you will catch that a lot of amateurs or people that maybe don't do sub to transaction coordination every day run into? What is it? What is it that you can find or what you can coordinate through that most people cannot?
Well, I think when it comes down to it, one of the main things is either the underlying mortgages, right? Because if they have like a down payment assistance or they have a forbearance and that wasn't included on the contract, now all of a sudden your house that you thought had like an ARV that was like $50,000 less than, or $50,000 more than what you were paying, all of a sudden it's only $10,000 because there's, second positions like down payment assistance or forbearances have to be included in the purchase price because ultimately they are being taken over, right? So knowing to look out for things like that, and also knowing when I'm looking at a settlement statement, maybe the fee that they're charging for the tax stamps is like inordinately high. You have a $15,000 seller carry, and let's say it's all of a sudden you're looking at it and you're like, why is this $5,000 to record a deed when the purchase price is only, I don't know, $20,000, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing what those numbers should be looking like and being able to pinpoint that, that's something that most investors don't really know how to do. And having somebody in their corner who can and who can talk to the title company and get that sorted out, I think is invaluable because it's really sad. I actually had somebody say to me today, she goes, I told her all of the corrections that needed to be on the settlement statement. And she's like, well, I'm going to have to call in my assignment expert. I was like, are you kidding me right now? Because it was getting wholesaled. And I'm trying to explain to her the whole thing about the $29,000 and some of it is cash to seller or whatever. And then she's like, I need to get my assignment expert on the phone. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. What is this? So, title companies, even though you guys might think, oh, yeah, the title company will take care of everything for me, I don't need the TC. They don't really know what they're doing all the time. So, and if you don't know what you're doing and they don't know what you're doing, you're just going to end up spending thousands more dollars than you should be. So, it's things like that, just the back end mechanics of everything and those little nuances.
Well, those are very important for sure. Do you talk to the mortgage companies as well? Have you done anything on maybe like the loss mitigation side or negotiating with the mortgage companies to, get payoffs and that kind of thing?
So, oftentimes with subtws, I develop a pretty good relationship with the seller where they give me their mortgage information and their logins like super early on. So I'm able just to go in there and request the payoffs and do that. But I've had instances where I've had to call the bank and kind of like act like I was the seller to
Mm-hmm.
get that information. And in this day and age, let's face it, I've called myself Leslie Dawn or whatever, or what the hell there was a Martin. His name was Martin too. And I was like, yeah, this is Martin so and so. And they can even ask me, or like, that's a guy's name. They don't say anything. They just let it go. So it's pretty funny. But yeah, I've had to call and get, reinstatements and payoffs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for a sub two transaction, you don't need a payoff. Some title companies will say, oh, we want one anyway. Um, but in those rare instances, I've been able to get one. So I have worked with the lenders.
Let's talk about the boogeyman that everybody is afraid of, and few people have probably experienced or run into, being the due on sale clause. And I know that this is going to raise chaos in the chat. I'm already seeing the people already had an idea what was going on here. But have you run
Man, let
into
me tell you
that
something.
yet?
One time, and I will tell you, it wasn't because the banks, there was nothing that happened except that when this lady finished closing on the property, she called the bank and she told them that she bought it. So, of course, they accelerated the note. Due on sale is not as prevalent as people might think. Um, with all the transactions that I've done, I've only had that one instance. And that she pretty much just told on herself and brought it on herself. But it's very easy to remediate. Like all you have to do is deed it back to the seller, show the mortgage company that it was deeded back, and then deed it back to the buyer again. It's not, and of course there's other ways to handle it if it has to be escalated. But it's funny because I don't know, I'm sure you guys have heard the name Alan Seshker and Seshker Title, maybe.
Let us know in the chat,
So
ladies and
they're
gentlemen.
they're pretty huge in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people will use them um, for their wraps and their subtus and all of that because they say, they're great or whatever. I have mixed feelings. I don't really like using them. They take too long. But he actually has a rap class and he talks about the due on sale clause and he says exactly that. And I've, in my experience in doing all of these deals, I see that it's not some, like, it's really not something to be that concerned about. Honestly, as long as you handle the insurance properly, do not buy a sub two and leave that policy in place and think that it's going to cover you. Because if something happens, even if you're listed as additional insured on the homeowner's policy, the fact that the homeowner sold the house and it was deeded to somebody else means it's not their primary residence anymore. And if something were to happen and a claim needed to be put in, once they start doing that digging, they're going to see that it was deeded over to somebody else. And all of a sudden, that's it. Nobody's going to get covered. So, getting the proper insurance in place, making sure that you don't default on those mortgage payments. And the third one, you really can't help. If it's a smaller bank, I would say watch out because they have closer eyes on their files than bigger banks do. Like a Penny Mac is not like they have all these different departments, and those departments don't necessarily talk to one another. But when you have a smaller, like maybe like a community bank or some kind of like credit union or something, they have closer eyes on their files and they might end up noticing that a deed was transferred, in which case they might send you a due on sale.
Okay.
It's not that, it's really not that bad.
Yeah. So there is solutions. Overall, would you suggest that somebody be mindful of it? Like, do you think that it is something that people should worry about, or is it really not that big of a deal?
It's really not that big of a deal. It's kind of like when you get in your car, you know there's a chance that you could have an accident, maybe because it was somebody else's fault,
Mm-hmm.
but you still get in your car maybe multiple times a day. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't think it's anything to be like super nervous about. It's just like with any, I mean, you could be crossing the street and get hit. It's just, you can't really avoid that kind of stuff. It just doesn't happen as often. Um, you get your insurance, you put on your seatbelt, you look both ways, you do what you have to do, and at the end of the day, you just keep it moving. Just make sure that you're taking care of that mortgage payment and getting that insurance in place.
Fantastic. I'd love to talk about wraps a little bit because this is something that I see a lot of people are curious to learn more about. One of the ways that I've heard that sellers can be protected more than some just regular sub two, you buy a house sub two, is with buying it with a wrap and guaranteeing some sort of promissory note. Can you break down what that process actually looks like and like what all of this means?
Sure. So the call that I just had with the seller, he was asking me about the promissory note. When we do a wrap, and I always call it a like a don't confuse wrap with like putting your own terms on top and selling it to somebody else on a sub two. A wrap is when you purchase a property sub two and you put a promissory note and a deed of trust or a mortgage in place. We call them a mirror wrap. And essentially, what that does is if, God forbid, the buyer can't pay the mortgage or something ends up happening to them, whatever, it allows the seller to then go and file foreclosure on the buyer and get their property back. If there was no security instruments in place, then they would not be able to do that. They would have to wait for the lender to foreclose on everybody, in which case their credit would be ruined. They would be in a whole lot of problems and probably in a worse situation than they were when they sold the property. And then it looks like, oh, are you frozen still?
I'm moving around.
Oh, there he goes.
This phone is acting up today.
So it does provide more security for the seller. I think what they used to say was like, oh yeah, we'll have a deed in lieu on. Now, I've seen this before and it irritates the crap out of me because there's wholesalers who will tell the sellers, oh, it's okay if we miss one payment, you'll automatically get your property back. And they're totally misleading the seller because that doesn't happen.
Hmm.
There is no way that that's going to happen. There has to be a process that gets put in place. And there's things like um, a notice to cure, there's a grace period, there's a notice of default. Like there's all these things that they have to do before they can foreclose on somebody. They can't just say, all right, well, I have this pre-signed deed in lieu and this is going to work. It doesn't work that way. Um, the deed in lieu of foreclosure is something that would be signed at the time of default and not beforehand. So telling somebody that, oh yeah, we're gonna have a pre-signed deed in lieu and the title company is gonna hold it, that doesn't happen. Title company has to be unbiased. They cannot hold something like that. And if they know that there's a pre-signed deed in lieu, they're basically saying our title insurance is no good because title insurance is saying, okay, we know that nobody else out there has a vested interest in this property and we can ensure that nobody can lay claim to this when there's something pre-signed waiting in their drawer, right? Conflict of interest, we can't do that.
Hmm.
um, so I think knowing how to tell a seller that they'll be protected with a promissory note and a mortgage that they're going to hold as publicly recorded, the mortgage or the deed of trust, not the promissory note, because promissory notes don't get recorded. But that gives them some sense of security.
Okay. And what would be another way you could offer some sort of sense of security to a seller that is afraid that after they deed you their house catches on fire, or somebody ruins their property value? What do you say to that person to assure them that this is a good option or something that they should consider?
Um, I think insurance would have to come into play on that.
Mm-hmm.
And them knowing that you're going to have an insurance policy that is created after you purchase the property or as you're closing on the property, where they're listed as an additional insured or additional interest, so that they also, we have the mortgage company listed on there too, right? It's a lot different when there's an actual vested interest, as if, there was a seller carry. Let's say it's a hybrid and they were also getting some money on the side, versus it just being the mortgage company. But either way, that insurance policy is placed in such a way that it protects the mortgage company and the seller.
Okay.
So, I mean, of course, you don't know when something's going to happen, but at least you have that in place.
And so, if you buy a house sub to, you suggest that after you've closed and the deed is in your name, you get your own insurance policy separate from what the seller may have once had and make them an added insurer.
Preferably before you close on it, right? Because if you close on this house and tomorrow it catches on fire, now you've already got a deed that's been recorded in your name and you risk not being able to get anything. So preferably before you close, but definitely having them on as an additional interest, not additional insured, because with an additional interest, they would just be like on the policy to receive notices and stuff like that, but they wouldn't really be the ones like, how they talk about, oh, well, my seller got an insurance check and how do I get them to sign it over to me?
Mm-hmm.
You need to place them as additional interest. If they are on as additional insured, then they're going to have a vested interest in the property.
Got it. Ladies and gentlemen, take advantage of this opportunity to drop some questions in the chat or raise your hand. I'd love to bring some people up to get a chance to ask some questions as well. We've covered a lot on the TC side. We've seen a live call in this podcast of what it actually looks like, what these conversations really do entail. Um, Rogue is asking if TC life is peaceful. I'm sure it's active.
Let me tell you something. There's days where I am working till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. As a matter of fact, on Monday, I don't know how many closings I had that were supposed to happen this week, but I had so much going on and I'm constantly on the phone all day long that the only time I get to do my work is like at night. So I often joke around that I work in two shifts, right? Like this is typically my second shift because after this title is closed, nobody's calling me, nobody's expecting answers back. So I can just sit there and work. I've started like building up a team so that I can not have to do that anymore.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't say it's peaceful. I'm constantly thinking about like what I have to do next. Like there's this running to-do list in my head all the time with all these deals. And I will say though, I'm never bored. I'm never ever bored.
Well, that's good. That's a good spot to be in. Always being
Yeah.
productive. I know we've broken out, a lot about the business. I'd love to ask you, how is it that you really got into real estate? You could be doing anything else. You could be still working where you were once working. How did you get into real estate? And then I'll have a follow up question after we answer this one.
I think I got into real estate the way that most of us investors get into real estate, and it's like you happen to be on YouTube one day and you see this video about, buying a house with $5,000 or, taking over somebody's mortgage or different ways you can make money. And I had a construction company in New Jersey. We did stucco.
Hmm.
And I used to go into these houses and they would be like just down to the studs. And I would see the transformation before and after. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. How do I get into this? Right? Like, I knew I didn't want to be a realtor. I liked that whole like fix and flip aspect of it. And I thought that ultimately I would be a wholesaler and get some money to start doing fix and flips. And I was like, okay, so how do I start wholesaling? Start watching videos. And I end up finding Pace and Jamil and Brent Daniels and all these, and I'm like, oh man, there's something here. This is pretty cool. So I think it started off with that, like it piqued my interest. And then there came a situation where I had to I had to leave New Jersey. And I was like, how am I going to make money for myself now, right? Because I was used to all this money, like we were doing stucco contracting, and that's pretty expensive stuff. It's not your typical like drywall stuff. Like applying stucco is very expensive. So we always had all this money, and all of a sudden I'm in Florida, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm broke. What am I gonna do? I don't want to work for anybody else ever again. Like I worked for myself for 7 years. And as I started finding the whole real estate thing, and I was like, oh, paperwork, I could do this. This is easy. And the more I started getting into subtw and meeting more people, and I was coming in here, I was learning, and I just kind of like fell into it. I don't know. I just eventually, like, I just kind of process of elimination with everything else, right?
Hmm.
And I ended up being a TC.
That's one of the reasons that I love real estate so much is there are so many different ways to make money. It's such a broad opportunity. Like there's just so many different ways, and everybody's making money in a different way. You got people that do the flips, that are listing the properties as agents, the wholesalers that find these discounted deals, and of course now the transaction coordinators that make it all possible. I think it's incredible. What do you see?
Super.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say we're super underrated, right? Because I think
Yeah,
when people think TC, they just think like, oh, somebody who's filling out contracts and paperwork, but they don't realize that we know all the buyers, we know all the private money lenders, we know all the good title companies. Like we're just this information hub for real estate investors.
that's awesome. I want to ask you because you've got yourself in a great position where you figured out your niche, you figured out what you want to do, and you've got a
Mhm.
business that's thriving. With the revenue that you generate from this, what is your plan for what you want to accomplish in the future?
I think that what I want to do is what I originally started in real estate wanting to do, which I left out a big piece of that. Was that I wanted to somehow create some kind of housing for women who were trying to come out of domestic violence situations and they had nowhere to go.
Mhm.
Um, because there are lots of places like that, but there's no semblance of real life, right? So I was like, when I get out of this situation, I'm going to create housing for women who are in these kinds of situations and do that. And somewhere along the way, I kind of forgot about that, but recently it's been spiked, like it's been sparked up again. And I think what I want to do with my income is to be able to buy mobile home parks, maybe a few RV parks, set up some kind of like work life thing for women in those situations, and ultimately kind of go down the road of affordable housing. because I don't think there's enough of it. And there's so many RV parks and so many mobile home parks that are just left, rotting away because people don't know how to manage them. People who own them are getting older and don't know what to do with them, don't want to do the work anymore. So I still have a lot to learn to get there because I don't quite know how to underwrite those parks, and I don't quite know. I'm sure I could find the money for it. I mean, I just need to ask. Um, but ultimately, that's what I want to do, and kind of build up a team that knows how to TC the way that I TC, that can kind of just keep on doing that while I go and pursue other ventures.
That is incredible. That is an incredible why. And I'm a strong believer it is going to happen.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And that would allow me more time to be like John and just travel and
No, it's crazy. I think I found where I want to be at now. I found a real solid spot with some great people, incredible investor network out here, and I see myself sticking here in Colombia for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh nice.
So it's fun to travel
And you've
around.
been pretty much all over.
I have, yeah, I've been around. So I'm grateful and excited because I think that it's so important to be around good people. It's so important, and I'm so glad that you were able to connect, especially in the subtw community, and get around people that could pour into you and help you identify like what your strengths were. Because if you were to stick around wholesale, just like that one quote from Albert Einstein, right? If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life thinking, it's
Yeah.
stupid, right? But
Yep.
you have gotten around the right people that could see what your talents are, see what your gifts are, and guide you in the right direction. And that's why it's so important. And that's why I'm so grateful to be a part of this community, part of the networks that I've been tapping into recently in real life, and just incredible
Hmm.
people. Grateful to be in proximity with you. I have been doing
Okay.
mostly novations. I'd love to get some sort of subtw thing going. I reached out to Matt Riley's team on a deal. We got to try to break some bread, and I know that if we can get under contract, we're gonna work together on something for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because you mentioned novations, and I'm just thinking like I know several people who are actually buying these properties sub two, maybe just paying off the arrears of like 6,000 or whatever, less than. I closed two deals today. One was 10,000, one was $14,000, and they're getting in for these super low prices, novating them or rehabbing them, and then selling them on the retail market, what we call wholetail or
Hmm.
subtail actually, and making so much money from that. So yeah, I mean, I would love to work with you on some deals.
Absolutely. Have you seen anybody, or maybe like an increase in people buying deeds, like specifically buying deeds from sellers that are maybe upside down and then going and trying to get them up out of these types of situations with short sales, all these different kinds of things?
Um, it doesn't come across my desk.
Okay.
I mean, I know a lot of people who are buying notes, but I
Hmm.
don't really have anything like, I mean, it's just other people in the community that I know and I deal with, but not in business, just that we know each other. So like if somebody came to me and said, "Oh, I want to sell this note," I would know who to direct them to, but I've never actually worked with them before.
Awesome. I'd love to open it up. Ladies and gentlemen, if anybody in here has a question for Ella, I know that her time is very valuable and she's been gracious and generous enough to share some of it with us today to answer some questions and literally show us live. I mean, it doesn't get more real than this, ladies and gentlemen. This is what a real life TC does, and it's incredible to
Yeah,
see. You got to take advantage of this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen.
for sure. It's fun, but it's work. It's
Yep.
definitely not one of those 9 to 5 deals.
No, it's not the get rich quick overnight either, I bet.
Mm-mm. No. So I see somebody was asking how many files would you say is manageable without a team in a month? I think it really depends on your skill set in managing, or rather herding cats, as I like to say. I think for me, I kind of maxed out at like 20 deals per month by myself. Um, but some people max out at 10. It really depends on your skill set, honestly.
Also, for the people that are getting ready to type something in as well, how is it that people can get in touch, stay connected, and work with you on their deals?
So they can email me or they can hit me up. I don't really, honestly, I get some, I get some people reaching out to me on Discord, but because I don't really have it open all the time, I tend to see their stuff a little late. So I would say Instagram, underscore the real LRA, or you can, I'd say email me probably, but I think maybe Instagram is probably the easiest. I could drop my email in here if you want.
Drop the email, drop the Instagram, let people connect. We want to see business flourish. That's what we're here to do. We're here to create opportunity.
Yeah, I love it, and I think it's for me, it's important that real estate investors, especially those who are just starting off, understand how to do these deals properly because it leaves a really bad taste in people's mouths when they deal with wholesalers or investors who really don't understand what they're doing, and they get burned by it.
Well, fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you add Ella to your contact list on your emails for all creative transaction coordination.
I see Fabrice in here. Is Fabrice in here? Man, it's been so long since I've spoken to him. Um, are you currently doing Gator TC? I do PML deals. I tend to stay away from Gator deals just because they can get really messy. I had one that they brought to me and it didn't even end up going through. So I tend to stay away from them. I don't like dealing with Morby methods and I don't like dealing with Gator stuff because a lot of the times those deals they're not viable and they fall apart quickly. What is a typical offer structure when presenting to end buyer as a wholesaler? Bizarra. What do you mean by that? Other people talk, John?
Yeah, they can raise their hand. I'd love to see some people hop up on the stage. Tap that hand wave button, ladies and gentlemen. Hop up on the stage. You can join us up on the stage and ask a question.
Do I invest in renovations? No, but I can if there's somebody who's looking for private money, I can definitely direct them to people. I haven't gotten to the point where I want to lend my money out yet. I just get real nervous about that. Like I've seen some deals go sideways and I don't know that I'm ready to start investing in other people's stuff unless of course, they've been doing it for a while, but am I offering the seller as compared to a traditional wholesale deal? How does it differ? You want to come up on stage, Pizarro?
Let's bring them up.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea because I don't really know how to answer his question. So what have you been up to, John?
Just living life. I'm grateful. I'm blessed.
Married?
I'm married. I'm 23. I'm married. I've been going to these events. We've been trying to eat healthy and stay, active. Spanish has been, huge. I've kind of like mastered Portuguese now because we speak all the time.
Mhm.
And I was
Yeah.
losing the Spanish, so I had to go back, start speaking some Spanish again. Now my Spanish is good. Um,
Tell me something. Did your parents ever figure out where you were?
no, not really. I mean, until I told them, I told them where I was at and that kind of thing. That was after some time, and yeah. Now I just called my mom today, talked to her. She's good. Family's good. That's good. You know,
Nice.
trying my
Nice. I
best. You know,
remember when you first left. You were
yeah,
like, yeah, I
crazy.
didn't even tell them. I was like,
I was taking some crazy risks, but everything played out the way it was supposed to. You know, and that's the beautiful part about life. Um, and I don't think
yeah.
I would change anything about it, to be honest.
That's awesome. I love seeing your growth, man. You've built quite a community here. So I'm happy to be able to have seen that from the beginning till now. It's amazing how many people you have in here. What
Um,
are you at right now? How many people are here?
we're just under 20,000. Can you believe?
Wow, that's insane. You've grown exponentially.
I see a lot of engagement in the chat. You know, you'll see the new faces there. But in this upcoming year, I really want to focus on getting a lot of these people in these live streams because you know we'll like max out around like 100. What we are seeing though
Yeah.
is there are a ton of people that catch the replays on the YouTube. So, ladies and gentlemen, I
Oh,
will
cool.
drop that YouTube channel. If you haven't already, make sure that you are subscribed so that you can catch replays like this, live sales calls, and everything that we post there. It's completely free. That's another thing that I've also kind of been thinking about is, you know, this has been free for such a long time, and I don't think I'd change anything about REI Rev being free, but maybe like building out my own personal brand a little bit more and trying to do some
Yeah.
sort of like consulting or something like that in addition, you know, to real estate because I mean, you know how it is. Like you're managing all these people's deals. You know how sticky these things are, and
Yeah.
deals fall out. It takes time, you know, volume, this kind of thing. And I'm grateful because I already closed. I already own property now, so I'm a real deal investor, and I'm adding
Look at
another
you.
rental to my portfolio November 1st.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you,
I
thank you,
love
thank you.
that.
I'm very
That's
grateful.
exciting.
Yeah, very excited, and it's just the beginning.
There you go. That's awesome. That is very cool. I can't wait till I can say the same thing about a mobile home park. I'll come back and I'll tell you
Yeah, that's gonna be something to celebrate for sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
Puzar, are you there?
Yeah. Just a moment. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hey,
What's going on?
can you hear us?
Oh, the phone is somewhere like I can't hear anything.
I'm not sure if they can hear us, but we can hear them.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, so I think their question is more like, what am I offering to the seller with a sub two type of deal versus you know a traditional wholesale? You know, like what is the value in that? Is kind of the question.
Um, so I think one of there's a few things, right? Like sellers who are facing pre-foreclosure, they can't find the money. Oftentimes, especially if they just purchased a property maybe like a year or two or even 3 years ago, they don't have any equity in there to be able to pay a realtor and their closing costs. So they end up having to either come to the table with money, which they can't, or they have to price their properties like super high that they price themselves out of the market and they stay long days on market and eventually, the more you wait and the longer time it takes to get that house sold, those mortgage payments keep on building up. So if somebody could come and save them that headache and pay those arrears off and save their credit and pay the realtor and pay the closing costs, get them out of that situation, that there's a lot of value in that, right? Because that's essentially somebody's livelihood. If they were to end up losing their house and being foreclosed on and having that on their record for however many years, sometimes it's just that they have to move and maybe they got called away on duty or they moved bases or whatever the case is. We get a lot of VA loans, um, a lot of divorces, and not even divorces. Oftentimes it's really just that they shacked up together, they bought a house and things didn't really work out. But you also come across some really sad situations too, and they don't have the money to get out of these properties. So, as investors with the know how and the ability to be super transparent with the sellers, of course, but given that ability, giving them that ability to get out of those situations with your skill set and your tools that you have, which not every investor has or knows how to pitch. I think it's really important. Of course, you're going to have those people who are very adamant about not wanting to have the mortgage stay in their name. But it's like, which is the lesser of the two evils? Either I have this mortgage stay in my name and I can get out of this house and I don't have to pay anything, or I'm going to lose my house and be foreclosed on and ruin my credit and I'm going to be like in a whole world of hurt. So, which one do I do? And oftentimes they opt for just letting somebody take over their mortgage payments.
Hopefully that answers your question. Um,
I think he came back. Is he back?
we got Steve with a great question here.
What is my opinion on newbie wholesalers going straight into crate? I think if they don't know what they're pitching, they need to stop pitching it.
Hello.
Essentially.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. So,
Okay, it's okay.
yeah. Yeah, I was in class. I just rushed up quickly to ask a question. I was just curious, right? My main question was, I mean, with traditional wholesale, we know the whole process, right? Get it under contract for far less than it's worth, right? Especially if it's distress, right? Then you put your
Mhm.
assignment fee on top of the repair and rehab estimate, right? And then
Mhm.
you wholesale it to your end buyer, right? That's common sense. That's pretty much what most of us know on this platform, right?
Sure.
I'm asking, right? How does that differ from when you're doing a subto, right? When you're doing a subto, what's different?
So I think what's different is, I mean, on the back end, I could tell you like a whole list of things that's different. But on the front end, I would say what's different is that you're not really able to hide your price as well, right? Because ultimately, when you're assigning that contract, that person is taking over not just the terms that you have with the seller, but also the fees that are on that contract. It's not just a one base price and that's it, right? Now you have like, what's the underlying mortgage? What's the, if there's any cash to seller? Maybe there's a solar lien on there or whatever the case is. And you have to make sure that the end buyer understands what those costs are, right? Because how are they supposed to underwrite their properties to know if they're going to make any cash flow if they don't have transparency on what the numbers are at the end of the day? So it's not as it's not as ambiguous as with a cash wholesale transaction. Right,
Okay,
because if John gets a piece of land and he bought it for $30,000 and it's selling it to me for $100,000, I don't need to know that he bought it for $30,000. At the end of the day, that has nothing to do with me. But if there's a mortgage on there for $30,000, then I have to know that I'm responsible for that. So you have to disclose that.
okay, perfect, perfect. I mean, just a follow up, right? When the owner has some equity in the deal, right? Say the property is the ARV is currently valued at around $350,000, right?
Hmm.
And equity he's built up in the property is up to say 177,000, right?
Hmm.
There's a remaining balance of 173,000, right? I'm trying to understand, right? When I'm wholesaling to my end buyer, is my end buyer paying for the equity he's built up in the property? Is he going to pay the entire 177,000 in equity that has built up from the seller?
Well, that depends. Is that your agreement with the seller? Because if it is and you're assigning that to somebody else, that means that they're going to be responsible for that.
Hmm, Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that $177,000 in equity is not going to disappear just because you assign that contract.
Okay. Okay.
So you definitely, that's what I'm saying. The whole transparency thing, it's huge. You have
Okay.
to disclose these things.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Any advice on a potential deal for someone who has got their first sub two?
What do you mean?
I mean, besides being transparent with subtws, like you just mentioned, do you have any other advice for wholesaler?
Get a TC, because you probably don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. Yep.
You don't know how to talk to the seller and get them to give you their mortgage information, or you don't know how to explain like the underpinnings of the whole transaction. They're going to ask you all these questions. What do I do with my insurance? Do I cancel it now? What do I do with utilities? What do I do with that? Do I tell the mortgage company? There's certain things, of course, yeah, duh, don't tell the mortgage company, right? But then the other things, what do you tell them? When the title company is asking you, oh, yeah, so this is a sub two, I know how to do a sub two. Do you know how to ask the questions that's going to determine if they actually know how to do a sub two? Because oftentimes they'll tell you, yeah, we know how to do a sub two. And guess what? You take that transaction for 2 weeks long, transaction gets to their underwriter, and underwriter is like, nope, absolutely not. We're not doing this. So I would always say, and I don't say it because I make money off of it, I say it because I have the experience and the know-how to help you avoid a bad deal, or to help you avoid having to deal with title companies that are going to make a mess of your deal and possibly kill your deal.
Okay.
And I know John has experienced that before
Oh,
with
man.
title companies messing with his deals.
It's honestly ridiculous. You gotta have the right title company. I got plugged in with a guy. Do you use like the same title company for a lot of your work, Ella, or are you like bouncing
No,
around from other title companies?
no. I try not to use national title companies because all they do is they outsource their work to other title companies and you run into the same problems.
Hmm.
So I have like a list of title companies in every state. And one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that if you're doing a deal, let's say it's in, I don't know, Orlando, Florida, you don't need a title company that's in Orlando. You just need a title company that's in the state that's licensed with the state. It could be in Jacksonville, it doesn't matter. Because as long as you have a mobile notary that can go and sign the documents, and on the sub two, you should always have the seller sign with a mobile notary. I don't care how many times the title company says, "Oh, you can sign a power of attorney digitally." Problem is that with a power of attorney, which you're always going to get in a sub two, not every lender is going to accept a digitally signed power of attorney. So you always need wet signatures. So you can have a mobile notary go anywhere in the state. It doesn't matter as long as they know how to do it. That's why we have a list of like title companies in each state that we work with.
Fantastic. Well, we've had some incredible questions from members. I appreciate everybody for contributing. Ella, I appreciate you. I'm incredibly
Yes.
inspired by what you've been able to accomplish and create for yourself. It is truly inspirational, and I
Thank
continue
you.
to wish you success. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, oh,
Oh
make
no.
sure. Sorry about that. I clicked the wrong button there. Make sure to connect with Ella in the side chat and go and add her to your email contact list and follow her on Instagram so that you all can run it up on these deals.
Yeah, for sure. I am more than happy to answer questions. I can't have like 30-minute conversations with people all day, but I can definitely answer any questions that you guys have. If you want to shoot me a message on Instagram, or if you have a deal that you're looking at, I'm always happy to answer whatever I can. And if you have any deals that you're working or you're trying to pitch, I also hop on the phone with like realtors and I explain sub two to them in a way that makes it easier for them to digest. So,
Fantastic. All right, Ella, before I let you go, I want you to give a message to your future self. This is addressed to future Ella. What do you have to say to future Ella?
oh man, I have never thought about this. You can do it, I guess, you can definitely make it. I never thought that I'd be able to make a living without having to work for somebody else, and I've been able to accomplish that. So basically anything that I put my mind to, I can make happen. It's always the who, not the how. Remember that, because it's about who you know, not about how to get it done. So just start making those connections with people, start talking to people in the community. This community is great, but I think you also need to start going to your local REIA meetings and start networking with people in your community and really building solid relationships. But thank you so much for having me, John. It's a pleasure. I'm really glad that, we got to connect like this. I'm sorry I haven't really been around much, but I'm still here. I'm in the shadows.
Grateful to have been able to connect today. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ella Ray.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to seeing what you do in these next few months.
Is hopefully something
Years.
revolutionary.
Yeah, I know, right?
There we have it. Ladies and
Thanks,
gentlemen,
man.
drop some fire in the chat. If you haven't already, you've got to invite somebody you think would benefit from being in proximity with us. Send them to reirev.com or discord.gg/reirev. Thank you again so much to Miss Ella Ray for coming and joining us, sharing so generously, even taking a live call and showing us exactly what it looks like to be a TC on the phone, getting a last-minute closing knocked out. Ladies and gentlemen, beyond grateful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ella.
Absolutely, I am. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your night, and we will catch you back here tomorrow for a interview with Mr. Scott Morris. Make sure you mark your calendars.
All right. Bye.
Bye.